You are sitting in a quiet room. Nothing is wrong. The door is locked. The lights are on. And yet, somewhere in the back of your mind, something feels off. A sound you can't place. A shadow at the edge of your vision. A feeling, deep and wordless, that something is watching you. Nothing is there. You know that, but your brain doesn't care. This is not anxiety. This is not paranoia. This is one of the oldest survival programs ever written into the human body, still running in the background of your mind thousands of years after it stopped being useful. And once you understand what it actually is, you will never experience that feeling the same way again. Your brain is, in the most literal sense, still operating as if you might be eaten. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. The neural architecture your brain uses to detect threats was shaped during a period when the single most important thing a human being could do was not get killed by something with claws. And that architecture has not meaningfully changed. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades mapping what he called the fear circuitry of the brain, and what he found was startling. The part of your brain that detects danger, a small almond-shaped cluster of neurons called the amygdala, does not wait for you to think. It does not consult your logic. It fires before your conscious mind even knows something has happened. You see a shape in the dark. Your body is already moving before you have processed what the shape is. That is not a bug. That was the most important feature a human being could have. Go back 200,000 years. You are not sitting in a quiet room. You are on an open plain. The grass is tall. The light is fading. And somewhere out there, a predator is deciding whether you are worth the effort. In that world, the humans who survived were not the calmest ones. They were not the ones who paused to think it through. They were the ones whose brains fired fastest. The ones who ran first and asked questions later. The ones whose amygdalas were hair trigger, always scanning, always suspicious, always ready to treat a rustling sound as a death threat. Those humans lived. Their cautious, patient neighbors did not. And you are their descendant. Every single person alive today is the biological heir of the humans who were most afraid. Think about that for a moment. Natural selection, over hundreds of thousands of years, filtered the human population relentlessly, and the trait it kept selecting for was hypervigilance. The ability to detect a threat that might not be there was always more valuable than the risk of missing one that was. Because missing a real threat meant death. False alarms only cost you a little energy. This is what researchers call the smoke detector principle, a term popularized by evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Nesse. A smoke detector that goes off when you burn toast is annoying, but a smoke detector that stays silent during a real fire is fatal. So evolution, like a paranoid engineer, set the sensitivity on your threat detection system as high as it could go. Better to panic at shadows than to die because you ignored one. And so here you are, in your quiet, locked room, with your ancient smoke detector screaming. Now here is where it gets stranger. Your brain does not just detect threats that are physically present, it actively looks for them. It is doing this right now, without your permission. Psychologists call this hypervigilant scanning, a state of low-level alertness that your brain maintains almost constantly, running a background process that checks, is that sound dangerous? Is that person hostile? Is that space safe? Is that shadow moving? You do not choose to run this process. You cannot turn it off. It has been running since before language, since before fire, since before the very concept of a quiet room existed. And your brain is extraordinarily good at finding patterns in ambiguous information. Too good. Neuroscientists use the term pareidolia to describe what happens when your brain constructs a recognizable shape out of random visual noise. You see a face in the wood grain. You hear your name in the static. You notice two dark shapes in the trees, and your body freezes before you can consciously decide whether they are eyes or just leaves. This is your predator detection system being applied to a world it was not built for. It evolved in a world where the cost of missing a predator was everything, and so it evolved to err massively on the side of seeing threats everywhere. The cost in the ancient world was occasionally unnecessary fear. The cost in the modern world is a low hum of anxiety that never quite goes away. Anthropologist and primatologist Lynn Isbell has spent years researching what she calls the snake detection theory, one of the most fascinating ideas in all of human evolutionary biology. Her argument is that primates, including your ancestors, were under such intense predation pressure from snakes for so long that the primate visual system actually evolved specialized neural pathways for detecting snake-like shapes. Your brain has dedicated hardware for spotting long, thin, curving objects in the environment, not because snakes are especially interesting, because they were, for tens of millions of years, one of the most common ways a primate died. You do not need to have ever seen a snake to have this system. You were born with it. And if your brain has dedicated snake detection hardware, ask yourself what else it might have built in. What other ancient threats left their fingerprints on your neural architecture? What you are afraid of, in ways you never chose and cannot easily explain, is almost certainly a fossil record of what killed your ancestors. The dark, for instance. Most people feel some version of unease in total darkness. Not fear, necessarily, but an ambient discomfort, a desire to be able to see. And that makes perfect sense. Your ancestors were not nocturnal. In the dark, they were blind, slow, and vulnerable. Every predator that wanted to eat them could see better at night than they could. The humans who were not bothered by darkness had a habit of dying in it. The ones who were made it to morning. You are reading this because your ancestors feared the dark. Heights. Drowning. The uncanny feeling when someone stands just slightly too close to you. The way a face that is almost human but not quite right fills you with inexplicable dread. Each of these fears has a fossilized predator inside it. Each one is a memory written not in words but in the structure of your nervous system, preserved across hundreds of thousands of years because the humans who had it survived and the humans who did not were removed from the gene pool. This is what you are carrying with you every single day. And now, consider what your brain is trying to do with that ancient system in a world of deadlines, of social media, of a phone screen at midnight, of a message left unread. The threat detection hardware your amygdala is running was calibrated for a world in which threats were physical, immediate, and usually lethal. Your brain does not have a separate module for modern abstract threats. It uses the same system, the email from your boss that makes your stomach drop, the conversation you keep replaying in your head, the low-grade sense that something bad is coming even though you cannot name what it is. Your body responds to those things the same way it would respond to a predator. Cortisol, elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, hyper-alertness. The exact same cocktail of stress hormones your ancestor flooded their body with when they heard something move in the tall grass. Your body cannot tell the difference between a performance review and a lion. It just knows something out there feels dangerous, and it is doing everything it knows how to do. Psychologist Paul Gilbert, who developed compassion-focused therapy, has written extensively about what he calls the tricky brain problem. You have a brain that was shaped for a different world, running threat programs that worked brilliantly in that world, but now has to navigate an environment that is almost entirely made of abstract social pressures, future simulations, and invisible problems. Your amygdala was never designed to worry about next month. It was designed to respond to right now. But your prefrontal cortex, the part that can imagine the future, keeps feeding it things to be afraid of, things that do not exist yet, things that may never exist, and your ancient threat system treats each one as if a predator just stepped out of the grass. This is why you cannot simply stop worrying by deciding to. Your rational mind is not in charge of your fear. Your fear is much older than your rational mind. So what do you do with this knowledge? The first thing you can do is recognize what is actually happening when you feel that wordless unease. That feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that your ancestors survived long enough to have children. It is millions of years of successful biological engineering doing exactly what it was designed to do in a world that has changed faster than evolution can keep up with. Your brain is not broken. It is ancient. And there is something clarifying about that. When you sit in your quiet room and feel the hair on the back of your neck rise for no reason you can name, you are experiencing the same thing your ancestor felt on the open plain 200,000 years ago. The same neural architecture, the same flood of alertness, the same body getting ready to run. The difference is that your ancestor had a predator to run from. You are sitting in a room with nothing wrong. But your brain never got the memo that the predator left. Every shadow that makes you pause, every sound that makes you hold your breath, every night you check the lock twice without knowing why. Those are not weaknesses. Those are heirlooms, passed down through an unbroken chain of people who were afraid enough, suspicious enough, and alive enough to stand right where you are standing now. You are sitting in a quiet room. Nothing is wrong. The door is locked. The lights are on. But somewhere in the ancient, flickering machinery of your brain, something is still watching the grass.